That's right. And look what you won.
For 40 years, Wheel of Fortune felt untouchable. Then came 2017. An old episode aired showing the hosts at a plantation with black women in slave-era costumes. The reaction was swift and devastating, but this wasn't just about one bad image. Internal documents later revealed a pattern of ignored warnings, dismissed concerns, and workplace discrimination. The only black executive had tried to prevent exactly this kind of disaster. She was silenced. When the backlash hit, Sony faced a choice: cancel one of TV's biggest hits or fight for survival. The decision they made shocked everyone. Merv Griffin's idea for Wheel of Fortune didn't start in a TV studio. It started in the back seat of his parents' car in the 1940s. While other kids stared out the window or fought over snacks, Merv and his sister passed time by playing hangman with scraps of paper. These quiet road trips shaped his love for word games. Long before he was rich or famous, he was just a kid guessing letters in a moving car. Years later, he turned that memory into one of the most successful game shows ever made. When he started developing a new show in 1973, he combined that same word-guessing tension with something flashier, a spinning wheel. The end result was a show built on something very small, but it ended up changing television forever. But the spinning wheel didn't come from nowhere. Merv was fascinated by casinos, especially roulette wheels. While staying at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, he became obsessed with how they worked. He watched how people stared, waited, and held their breath just to see where the ball would land. He wanted his game show to feel the same way: risky, exciting, and impossible to ignore. So he studied real roulette wheels. He even talked to casino executives and tested different designs. The final version he approved was bold, colorful, and full of tension. It felt just like Vegas, but without the gambling. With one spin, it could make someone rich or leave them with nothing. That feeling is what made Wheel of Fortune so addictive. Before the show we know today, Merv tried something else. It was called Shopper's Bazaar, and it aired in 1973. It was strange from the start. The wheel stood upright, like something from a carnival, and it spun automatically. Contestants didn't even touch it. The clues were delivered using a rotary phone, which already felt outdated. The show didn't have any suspense. The pace was awkward. Nobody liked it. Not NBC, not the test audiences, not even Merv. But instead of giving up, he learned from it. He changed the wheel, changed the format, and started over. That failure turned into the blueprint for something bigger. Even then, the show still needed help getting on the air. That's where Lynn Bolen came in. She was NBC's first female daytime programming executive, and she had a sharp eye for what people, especially women, wanted. After watching the pilot, she said it lacked glamour. She pushed Merv to make it more appealing to women, who made up most of the daytime audience. Her idea was simple: let contestants go shopping with their winnings. They could pick out furniture, jewelry, or even cars. It wasn't just about money anymore, it was about choices. That twist made the show feel personal. Boland's changes helped Wheel of Fortune get on the air. Without her, it might have never left the pilot stage. On January 6, 1975, Wheel of Fortune premiered on NBC with Chuck Woolery and Susan Stafford. The first puzzle ever solved on air was General Hospital. At first, critics didn't say much, but viewers loved it. The mix of wordplay and chance made it different from anything else on TV. It wasn't flashy at the start, but it had something people liked. And when it moved to syndication, it exploded. That big moment came on September 19, 1983. The show launched in a new format, airing at night and reaching homes across the country. But it didn't start big. Only 50 stations picked it up, and none of the biggest markets, like New York or Los Angeles, wanted it. Philadelphia was the largest city on board. Still, the show grew fast. Within a few months, nearly every household in America could watch it. By the next year, Merv launched a nighttime version of Jeopardy! 2. Together, they took over the game show world. Ratings soared. Other shows couldn't keep up. The risk had paid off in a massive way. In 1981, Pat Sajak took over as host, but it almost didn't happen. NBC's Fred Silverman thought Sajak wasn't famous enough. Merv Griffin disagreed so strongly that he stopped production until Sajak was approved. When Sajak finally got the job, everything clicked. His calm humor and easy charm made the show feel welcoming. And then came Vanna White. Vanna joined the show on December 13, 1982, after Susan Stafford left. She was chosen from more than 200 applicants. At first, her only job was to turn letters, but viewers loved her almost immediately. Her style, her grace, her smile, everything about her stood out. Soon, people were tuning in just to see what she'd wear. She and Pat became the most iconic duo in game show history. In 2019, when Pat had surgery, she even took over hosting for a while and proved she could handle the spotlight on her own. Even after more than 40 years, Vanna remains one of the most loved faces on television. The numbers back it up. In September 2024, Ryan Seacrest made his debut as the new host. His first episode brought in 4.62 million households, a 57% increase from the year before. That whole week, the show averaged 8.31 million viewers, its highest ratings in 5 years. Some fans worried the show would change too much, but it didn't. With Vanna still turning letters and Ryan adding new energy, the show found a fresh rhythm. It proved that Wheel of Fortune can keep evolving without losing what makes it special. In June 2017, an old episode of Wheel of Fortune quietly re-aired, but within hours, people across the country were furious. On screen, Pat Sajak and Vanna White smiled in front of a grand southern plantation house. Behind them stood 2 black women dressed in 19th century hoop skirts. To some, this looked like just another themed backdrop. To many others, it looked like something far worse, a sanitized image of slavery being broadcast on one of America's most beloved game shows. The picture was originally taken in 2005 at Oak Alley Plantation in Louisiana, where tour guides often wear period clothes. But when it resurfaced in 2017, the reaction was instant. People said the women looked like enslaved people. The plantation insisted the guides were never portraying slaves. Still, the damage was done. Viewers didn't care about the original intent. They saw a painful piece of history presented without care, and the backlash was fast and fierce. The producers were caught off guard. In a country still reckoning with its past, even a rerun could spark a cultural fire. It took less than 2 days for the outrage to go viral. Screenshots of the episode, first posted by a Twitter user named Joshua Itiola, spread like wildfire. Hashtags like Cancel Wheel of Fortune started trending on Twitter and Facebook. People didn't just criticize the photo. They connected it to deeper problems about how American media treats race and history. The image of that cheerful game show moment, juxtaposed with symbols tied to slavery, felt like a slap in the face. And the internet didn't let it slide. By the weekend, Wheel of Fortune wasn't just a game show anymore. It had become a national controversy. A single image, airing quietly on a weeknight, had reopened old wounds and turned into a modern media storm. Inside Sony Pictures Television, the people running the show were panicking. One executive later told Variety, anonymously, that it was the closest they had ever come to canceling the show outright before a new season. This wasn't a new episode. It wasn't meant to be controversial, but that didn't matter. In today's media world, reputation is fragile. One mistake, even one from years ago, can risk everything. Sponsors, ratings, the entire brand, it was all at stake. That's the reality for any show, no matter how iconic. Wheel of Fortune had always felt safe, but this proved that even long-running hits aren't immune when it comes to issues of race, history, and public trust. For Shelley Balance Ellis, the only high-ranking black executive on the Wheel of Fortune production team, the backlash hit hard, not just because of the public reaction, but because she had seen it coming. Ellis later spoke out and described how she had raised concerns about representation and racial sensitivity long before this happened. But when the crisis hit, she wasn't included in the key meetings. She felt sidelined. She said the internal culture wasn't just blind to the problem. It actively ignored the voices that tried to warn them. In later legal filings, Ellis shared how her concerns were dismissed and how she was met with resistance when pushing for change. The incident didn't just highlight what was shown on screen. It revealed the deeper problems behind it. The team knew they had to respond fast. The show's producer, Harry Friedman, issued a public apology. The footage was removed from all future reruns. Sony brought in outside diversity consultants. They reviewed the show's entire archive, looking for anything else that could cause offense. They also launched new training programs, better internal review systems, and stronger communication channels. The damage had been done, but now the goal was to show that they were listening and trying to do better. Still, the incident left a stain. It reminded everyone just how quickly things can unravel when history is treated like a harmless backdrop. Then, in 2022, it happened again. During a puzzle round labeled Rhyme Time, the correct answer appeared: Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Catch a tiger by the toe. It sounded like an innocent childhood rhyme, but many viewers knew the truth. The original version of that chant didn't use the word tiger. It used a racial slur. It was a rhyme with a racist history, used to dehumanize black children and echo slavery-era cruelty. Within hours, the internet lit up again. People were shocked that the show hadn't caught this. It didn't matter how common the rhyme was now. Its past was ugly, and people expected better. The puzzle spread across social media faster than anyone could control. Viewers posted screenshots, shared personal stories, and called out the show's writers. Hashtags like "Thou Do Better Wheel" and "Racist Rhyme" took over Twitter. News sites like Yahoo and The Root picked up the story. They explained the rhyme's history and criticized the show's failure to do basic research. Suddenly, this wasn't just about a puzzle. It was about a pattern. People were asking why the show kept making the same mistake, and the timing couldn't have been worse. 2022 marked the final season of Pat Sajak's legendary run. After 41 years, Sony had been planning a big farewell. They wanted to celebrate the nostalgia, the tradition, the comfort of a show millions had grown up with. But the controversy ruined that. Every article about the racist rhyme also mentioned the farewell season. Instead of warmth and celebration, there was tension and disappointment. It raised uncomfortable questions. Could a show so tied to the past really understand the present? Could it adapt without losing its identity? In March 2023, something strange happened on live television. A contestant named Fred Jackson showed up on Wheel of Fortune and dominated the entire game. He wasn't just any contestant. He was a professional wrestler and drama teacher, and he solved every puzzle with ease. By the time the game ended, he had won $75,800. Pat Sajak even joked that the show should be renamed after him. But what came next was even stranger. As Fred celebrated and hugged his dad, Sajak suddenly slipped behind him and tried to put him in a wrestling-style chokehold. It looked playful, but people online didn't take it that way. Clips spread fast. Some called it funny. Others said it looked like assault. Fred later said he wasn't offended, but by then, the moment had already gone viral and started a debate. People began to ask whether live game shows were still safe from controversy, even ones hosted by someone as friendly as Sajak. That wasn't the first time Pat Sajak got people talking. Over the years, his jokes started getting sharper. In December 2020, a contestant tried to spin the wheel during a promo, and Sajak snapped, "Never interrupt me. Never. Never interrupt a plug." He smiled while saying it, but the clip spread online with viewers arguing over whether he had gone too far. He once called someone's story the most pointless ever told. In 2023 and 2024, he kept rolling his eyes at contestants, cutting them off, and making jokes that some found rude. On a Christmas episode, a contestant asked what kind of puzzle they just lost, and Sajak coldly replied, "It's a puzzle you didn't solve." These moments got attention, but not always the kind the show wanted. Some fans thought he was just keeping the show lively. Others thought he had turned mean. After a few more awkward exchanges, the phrase, "Is Pat okay?" started trending online. But things got even more intense in 2014. Out of nowhere, Pat Sajak tweeted, "I now believe global warming alarmists are unpatriotic racists, knowingly misleading for their own ends. Good night." The internet exploded. The tweet was shared thousands of times, with critics calling it dangerous and irresponsible. Scientists and climate experts hit back, saying Sajak had crossed a line. Even Dr. Michael Mann, a well-known climate scientist, said environmental issues weren't a game show. Sajak later claimed it was just a joke. but many didn't find it funny. ABC didn't respond right away, and that silence made things worse. The tweet stayed in people's minds for years and came up every time another TV figure caused trouble on social media. It showed how quickly a public figure could create chaos with just one message. All of this created problems behind the scenes. ABC affiliates started getting nervous. The show was still popular, but the network had to deal with calls from local stations asking if it was still a safe place for advertisers. People were worried that the jokes, arguments, and online blow-ups could scare away brands. Some regions, especially those that cared about social issues, were paying close attention. Most stations didn't say anything publicly, but in 2023 and 2024, more and more internal reviews started popping up. Networks realized that even long-running shows like Wheel of Fortune weren't safe from modern expectations. Pat Sajak had hosted for decades, but in this new environment, even he wasn't untouchable. Of course, Pat Sajak isn't the only person to make headlines on the show. In 2013, a college student named Julian Batts got all the letters right on a $1 million puzzle. The answer was mythological hero Achilles. But when he read it aloud, he said Achilles. That one mispronunciation cost him everything. The rules said the answer had to be spoken correctly. Another contestant repeated the same puzzle, said it clearly, and won the prize. Julian said he wasn't angry, just disappointed. But that moment became one of the most famous mistakes in game show history. It reminded everyone how high the stakes could be, even when the puzzle is already solved. A similar thing happened in February 2025. A contestant named Arziche Salonga had nearly won a toss-up puzzle. The answer was African safari, but she pronounced it safari. The judges said it was wrong, and someone else won instead. That tiny difference in pronunciation sparked a wave of online debate. Some people said the judges were too strict. Others said the rules were the rules. Arziche still won a trip to Scotland, but many felt she had been robbed. It was a painful example of how accents and regional speech could work against people in high-pressure moments. Then there was Will Jordan. In November 2024, he faced a nearly completed puzzle. The answer was, give yourself a round of applause. But under the lights, he blurted out, treat yourself a round of sausage. It was wrong, but it was hilarious. Even the host couldn't stop laughing. Will later said he just froze and went with the first thing that popped into his head. The moment became an instant classic. People loved it because it was so honest and unexpected. It showed how easy it is to mix things up when everyone's watching. In December 2021, another painful moment played out on the show. A woman named Charlene Rubush had made it to the final round. The puzzle was choosing the right word. She started with choosing the right card, then quickly changed it, but she paused before saying word, and that tiny delay cost her the win. The show said she ran out of time, even though she said the right answer. Fans were furious. They said it wasn't fair. Audi stepped in and gave her the car anyway. That act of kindness helped soften the blow, but people still talk about whether the rules were too strict that night. In October 2024, two longtime executives made headlines across Hollywood. Shelley Balance Ellis and Monique Diaz filed major complaints against Sony Pictures Entertainment, the studio behind Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. Together, they had worked at the company for almost 50 years. But what they claimed in these complaints shocked many. They said Sony had allowed a toxic culture to grow behind the scenes, one full of race, gender, and age discrimination. They also said management punished anyone who spoke up. These complaints were submitted to both the California Civil Rights Department and the National Labor Relations Board on the same day. The details included some very troubling moments. People making fun of black contestants' hairstyles, racist comments made openly in control rooms, unfair pay, and a pattern of leadership ignoring it all. Both women lost their jobs in April 2024, just after they started pushing back against this behavior. They believe that timing wasn't a coincidence. Shelley Ellis had been working for Sony For 25 years, she was the highest-ranking black executive on both shows. Her job was to handle licensing and clearance. That meant she saw everything up close. She said she had raised concerns many times. Sometimes it was about racist jokes. Other times, it was about old plantation footage being used on air. She said leadership brushed off those warnings again and again. Then, her role was changed. Sony called it a reorganization. But to Ellis, it felt like she was being pushed out. Her team, which included mostly people over 40 and people of color, was also let go. She said every person of color on her team lost their job and younger white employees took their place. Monique Diaz had worked on the shows for 23 years. In 2021, she found out that she was making $75,000 a year. But a newly hired white co-worker with less experience was making $125,000. That $50,000 gap became the heart of her complaint. After she brought it up, Sony raised her salary to $113,000, but she was still earning far less than her peer. Diaz said she had also been passed over for promotions again and again. When she talked about unfair pay, she felt targeted. Her story wasn't just about one paycheck. She said it revealed a much bigger issue, one that had affected women and people of color at Sony for years. Things came to a head in April 2024. That's when Sony shut down the entire clearance and licensing department. According to Diaz and Ellis, this team was the most racially diverse group working on either show, but Sony cut the whole department right after staff members raised concerns about how they were treated. The company said the cuts were part of a broad reorganization, but the two women say that was just a cover story. They believe Sony removed the very people who had been brave enough to speak out. That decision not only ended careers, it also wiped out a group of senior employees who had years of experience and deep knowledge of the shows. Critics say that move pushed diversity back by decades. Sony defended the cuts. They said the shows had been running for more than 40 years and it was time to restructure. They claimed some jobs were redundant and the business needed to change. But Ellis pushed back, saying it wasn't just about job titles. She said the people who were removed were mostly older, more diverse, and had raised concerns about discrimination. In her view, Sony replaced them with younger white employees and tried to frame it as business strategy. She believed the company wasn't solving its workplace problems. It was just removing the people who pointed them out. Then came the moment that shook the entire broadcast industry. In February 2025, Sony made a move that no one saw coming. On February 3rd, they told CBS that it would no longer have the rights to distribute Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy. CBS had been doing that job since the 1970s, but now Sony wanted full control. They said CBS had entered bad deals, underpriced the shows, and caused Sony to lose hundreds of millions of dollars. Sony also claimed CBS had cut staff and weakened advertising performance, all while using the shows to boost profits for its parent company, Paramount Global. With this move, Sony took a huge gamble, seizing back global control of two of the most popular shows in American television. CBS didn't sit still. Within days, they filed for an emergency court order to stop Sony. They warned the court that removing the shows from their lineup would cause massive damage. CBS said its local stations depended on the shows for advertising and viewership. Losing them would mean chaos. Contracts with advertisers and partners could fall apart. CBS called Sony's move a hostile takeover. They claimed Sony didn't want to fix a contract. They wanted to break the entire system. But on April 10th, 2025, CBS suffered a legal blow. Judge Kevin Brazil denied their request. In his ruling, he said Sony didn't have to keep sending episodes to CBS. Sony could now distribute the shows on its own. That moment ended a relationship that had lasted almost 50 years. It also opened the door for other studios to try something similar in the future. If this model worked, it could change the way legacy shows are owned and shared. For CBS, the fallout was huge. Their position as the top syndicator of game shows in America had suddenly collapsed. Without access to new episodes, local CBS stations faced a big problem. They had built entire schedules around Wheel, and jeopardy. If Sony pulled the plug, these stations would be stuck. Some would have to air reruns, others might be forced to show low-rated content or even paid programming. Advertisers would likely flee. These shows usually drew more than 7 million viewers per night. Losing that audience could wreck budgets and relationships. People inside the industry started calling it a nuclear winter scenario. Some believed Sony had created this moment on purpose to gain leverage. Others said they were simply exercising their rights as the owners. But for the local stations, the threat was real. If these shows vanished, they might never recover. Then, in a surprise twist, a California appeals court stepped in. On April 16, 2025, a panel of judges put a pause on the ruling. CBS was allowed to keep distributing both shows while the legal fight continued. They argued that the harm caused by pulling the shows right away was too great. The judges agreed that it made sense to wait until more evidence was reviewed. This stay gave everyone some breathing room. The shows kept airing. Advertisers stayed calm. Viewers didn't lose their nightly ritual. For now, the future of the shows remained in legal limbo, but at least the screens didn't go dark. Meanwhile, another crisis hit. In July 2025, Southern California faced one of its worst wildfire seasons ever. Over 27,000 acres burned, and around 180,000 people had to evacuate. Sony's Culver City lot wasn't damaged by fire, but the air quality was dangerous. Production stopped. That included filming for Wheel of Fortune. Scheduled tournaments were canceled. Taping plans fell apart. Staff were told to work from home if they could. Some were given respirators. Others needed help finding safe places to stay. Even though flames never touched the lot, the damage was still deep. The shutdown reminded everyone that even a major studio can be brought to a standstill by nature. The pandemic had already taught the team how to adjust. Back in 2020, when travel and gatherings were shut down, the shows started using remote auditions. Contestants could now apply from home using Zoom. That idea stuck. It saved money, allowed more people from rural or low-income areas to take part, and helped the team stay on schedule even during wildfires or other emergencies. By 2025, remote auditions had become part of the show's identity. They kept things moving during crises, made the process fairer, and opened the door for more diverse contestants than ever before. June 7, 2024 was another unforgettable moment. Pat Sajak said goodbye after 41 years of hosting Wheel of Fortune. He had led more than 8,000 episodes, despite recent controversies, some tied to politics or awkward moments on set. Millions tuned in to watch. People weren't thinking about the scandals. They just wanted to say goodbye. The farewell episode was titled "Thanks for the Memories." It became a viral hit. Sajak thanked families for watching and called the show a safe place for fun. Even as Ryan Seacrest prepared to take over, it was clear that viewers weren't ready to let go. They came together across generations to honor a piece of television history. Financially, the show has stayed strong through everything. It airs on more than 200 stations, which protects it from local problems. Its audience is loyal, especially families and older viewers. Advertisers love that consistency. Sony has also put money into remote production tools and studio upgrades. That helps the show stay on air even when disasters strike. While the TV world faces pressure from streaming, Wheel of Fortune has kept steady. Its mix of smart planning, loyal fans, and wide distribution makes it one of the most resilient shows on television today.